Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone joining us today from around the world. Welcome to our new webinar series, Demystifying Privacy, where we take complex and often confusing data privacy topics affecting you and demystify them. My name is David Diaz. I'm part of the sales team here at Usercentrics. So you may have received a phone call or email from me, sorry, but I'll be your host here today, and I'm joined by two of my colleagues and co-hosts. I have here first the marketing lead of our fast-growing partners division, Ms. Bethany Hendricks.
Hello.
And I also have here our senior support specialist who takes care of all our clients, Richard van der Veld. Apologies if I mispronounced that.
You did, but thank you anyway.
All right, so let's just go ahead and jump right into it. Cookies are dead. Well, not exactly, right? They're a bit burnt though. So let's go ahead and see what this means. Google has made a monumental decision to phase out third-party cookies in its Chrome browser, which is the largest internet browser in the world. What exactly is Google doing here and why?
Right. So let's talk about the case for data privacy. Where are we today? And to think about where we are today, let's think about where we started. And I'm speaking specifically about marketers here. So since the beginning of time, marketers have wanted data, as much data as possible, so that we can make data-driven decisions about our customers. We want to know where our customers are online, what they're doing, what they're clicking on, so that we can develop targeted ads to really suit their needs. But we have basically become the stalkers of the internet, and people are starting to realize that, right? People are starting to say, actually, how does this advertiser have so much data on me? And I swear I only thought about that product. I didn't even search for it or type for it anywhere. So how am I receiving this advert? Customers are starting to realize that their data is everywhere, and they're starting to want to take that back and say, actually, no, I don't agree to this, and I didn't consent to any of that. So what we're seeing now in the digital landscape is we're seeing three main drivers shifting the landscape. The first one, as I mentioned, is the users or the consumers. They are increasingly being concerned about their data privacy and wanting to take back their rights. Actually, according to a couple of recent studies, one by KPMG said that 40% of users will actually delete an app if they have data privacy concerns about it. And another study by the UK Data and Marketing Association said that there's a 100% increase in users' willingness to share their data if they trust a brand. So what we can see here is the users themselves are actually demanding privacy. The other driver, obviously not to forget about, are the regulators. So these are the people who are making the rules, right? The rules that we all have to follow, like, for example, GDPR in Europe. And these regulations are spreading. It's not just based in Europe anymore. We're seeing them popping up all over the globe. And not only all over the globe, but they are starting to get more specific. So we now have the AI Act and we have the Digital Markets Act. And the Digital Markets Act, for example, is not just targeting the end website users, but it's targeting the big tech companies, the Googles, the Metas, who are the ones who are selling this data as a service, right? So this moves us on to the third driver, the big tech players. So if you are a customer of these big tech players, you're going to start to feel the impact as they are tightening the regulations themselves. They are saying you're not going to be able to do the things that you were doing before if you're not respecting these data privacy regulations. And some examples of this, and the biggest examples that we have are from Google, is what we're talking about today. Google is depreciating third-party cookies in Chrome, but also you can see examples of this with the privacy sandbox and Google now pushing Google consent mode. And the other tech players are also following this trend, and they have their own consent APIs. So let's get into the topic of the end of third-party cookies. Cookies are dead, are they? We're not sure. Maybe we are. I'm going to hand over to my colleague Richard to get more into this topic for you guys.
So yeah, are they? Not quite, but we are getting there. As you can see, a lot of browsers have already discontinued the use of third-party cookies. So you can see Brave was one of the first ones. followed by Safari, Firefox, and as you can see, Chrome and Google have not discontinued it yet, but they have already started putting some limitations on there. They do have about 2/3 of the market, so it's good news for most of us. But it is going to change soon, and there have already been some changes. And I have this. Well, I expected a different slide, but let's go here instead. So first things first, let's just talk about the difference between first and third-party cookies. So this is all about ownership. A first-party cookie is owned by the domain that sets it. So it makes sense. The first person. Third-party cookies are set by a different party on that website. And in the next slide, which I was expecting, you can see this graphically. So basically, you have something inside the website that sets the cookie instead of the domain itself. And this is the slide. So as you can see, previously it was as the little image on the left. So you can see that C is actually another website inside the A and the B websites, and all of those shared the same cookie jar. So they could all put cookies in there, and they could all take them out and eat them, I suppose. But now, and this has been released since last year, and it went sort of under the radar. When I started seeing it, I didn't know it was happening, and I just didn't understand why things weren't working anymore. So now you have something called state partition. No, not state partition, storage partitioning. And now it sort of works like on the left. So you can see now that domain B and A have their own cookie jar, and as long as C is a child of one of those two websites, it can have its hands in its cookie jar. So for example, my kids can put their hands in my cookie jar, but Bethany's kids need to stay away from my cookie jar, and so does Bethany. That's basically what you're seeing here. And so, okay, so but how does it look in reality? Well, the example here, and I mostly do support for CookieBot, so I chose CookieBot examples. Here you can see that support.cookiebot.com, admin.cookiebot.com, and consent.cookiebot.com, which are all siblings, they can share third-party cookies. And they can also share it with their parents. So that's lucky for me. So when my kids have cookies, I have cookies. But me being the person I am, I don't share cookies. So you can see that on the bottom of the screen, my kids are out of luck. Like if I get cookies, there's no cookies in it for them. My wife, which does not have the same last name as I, no cookies for her either. That's just the way the cookie crumbles. But to get sort of serious here, it's all because of these iframes. So you can think like, oh, this is such a hassle, and also for us personally, like we as you can see in the example above, we have a bunch of subdomains, and we would like to have your consent be applied to all the domains we own, including usercentrics.com, which does not share the same top level domain. And the reason Google does this is because if I, by some weird means, inject an iframe, I can basically collect data on any website. So if I'm smart about it, I can collect data from tons and tons of websites that have nothing to do to me. So the trick here is that as long as the iframe is a child of something, then it can access the cookies. And as you can see, like I'll just quickly go back to the previous slide. As you can see in the slide here, that if C, which is normally embedded in the larger website, stands on itself, it suddenly can't touch those cookies anymore. I don't have a good metaphor for that. I would like to do something with my kids and my wife and the cookies, but it doesn't really work that way because they're iframes and those are people. Yeah, so that's what I had to say about cookies.
Richard, maybe it's when your kids become an adult, then you don't share cookies with them anymore.
I don't share cookies either way.
Well,
Great.
thankfully, we have Richard here to break down these really technical concepts, because all I'm hearing are cookies, and I like cookies, but I think maybe I have a different idea of what exactly cookies are in this world. But it does seem like the days of creepy ads may be over. And it seems that Google has read the writing on the wall here and has decided to basically force everyone to follow its action to change their digital marketing strategies on the internet. Now, this definitely affects the marketing world, but can you explain why a marketer should even care? Like, well, how does it affect the person or the marketing team or the advertiser or the publisher?
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, David. So there are two main reasons why you should care. The first one is that these big companies like Google are changing things. They are going to make sure that you have users' consent before you're allowed to use their advertising services. So at the moment, The Digital Markets Act is in place in Europe, and for European Google users, they cannot make use of things like remarketing if they are not passing these consent signals to Google. And we don't know for sure, that there will just be more and more limited features that you will be blocked from using if you don't have the consent signals and consent mode in place. So the number one thing really for marketers, okay, there are two things, but one of the things is you won't be able to advertise properly. And that's huge, right? This is monumental. The second reason why you should care, and maybe this is should be the first reason, is that your users actually care about what you're doing with their data. They actually care about whether you are respecting their rights. There's a study that Google did called Privacy by Design. And if you have time to check it out, definitely recommend it. But the things that they found from this study is that the impact of a poor privacy experience was almost as severe as that of a data breach. That's extremely significant. And also that there are actually clear actions that advertisers can take to increase customers' feeling of control and have a positive impact. So not only to save yourself from, something as severe as seeming like a data breach, but also you can really encourage trust, build trust among your users and consumers, and this will put you in a better light and also build like a better brand for your company. So big question for marketers, are privacy and marketing mutually exclusive? In the past, perhaps you would have said yes, privacy is blocking us from having the data that we need, blocking us from being able to do what we need to do in the marketing team to show ROI, to get the results. But actually, we need to start bringing these roads together and start thinking about privacy as a competitive advantage in marketing, building brand trust, and creating a brand that really respects users, not just because it's the right thing to do, it is the right thing to do, but also like your users care about this. So if you're ignoring it, you're really missing out. And not just about the sort of brand value of trust, but there are also things that you can do, like actual steps you can take to increase the data privacy, respecting the data privacy of your users, but also having the positive effects of advertising. So there are now tools in place and things you can do to make sure that you are maximizing your advertising spend while still respecting users' rights. And I'm going to hand back to Richard so that he can take us through some of these tools.
So what should you do? First of all, make sure you have a solid privacy UX, and by that we basically mean the banner. This fosters trust, and trust is really alpha omega, and you can really leverage this to your benefit. And as you might have noticed, I like telling stories, so I'll tell you another one. Why it's so important to get trust. So imagine you meet me on the street, a practically bald guy with a long beard, standing in front of a brick wall, and I tell you, hey, can I borrow your phone? You'll likely be like, no, I'm good. Ask someone else, and I wouldn't blame you. But imagine that the situation is slightly different. I still look the way I do, beard, still bald, and I approach you, but now I say, hey, my phone just died. I'm late. I'm late from an appointment, and I just want to call my daughter to tell her that I'm okay. Can I borrow your phone for a second? I'm not sure you will do it, but you're far more likely than you would have been before. So when you make a UI, you need to do this the right way, so you actually gain trust and not waste it. I'll get into that in a second. But also something you obviously should do, as we've been talking about. Cookies are on life support. It's been postponed a couple of times. It's even recently been pushed further again to next year. But it is coming sooner or later. So you need to start thinking about, okay, how can I get around this third-party cookies debacle? Like how can I still get the data I want? And there are tools. I mean, Google's not leaving us out to dry, unlike the other browsers companies. And last but not least, don't bundle monetary incentives. And that might sound like a foreign language, basically that means don't try to buy people's consent. So we've conducted some tests, and it turns out that if you try to sort of like buy people's accept, that has a negative approach. So, for example, everybody that has Facebook at some point got a message saying like, okay, you can either have a paid subscription or you can have a, we can spy on you. Obviously people were like, yeah, but you've been spying on me for 10 years, so just go right ahead. I'm not paying for this. But if you started off that way, it would have gotten it would have given a really bad taste in your mouth, because users do understand that their data is valuable. They just don't understand how, because I can't go out on the streets to a random person and say like, hey buddy, you want to know what my name is? €5 if I give you my name. They'll say, nah, I don't care about your name. So we understand our data is valuable, just not how. But we do inherently know our consent has some value and that you obviously want it. So don't try to lure it out of people. So to get back to the UX, what you basically want to do is you want to make it seamless. So it has to look sort of like your website. And the reason for that is because you want the trust in your company to sort of like be the only factor. If you put in a banner that is completely different, then first the customer has to trust you, but they also have to trust us. So suddenly there's two parties that you have to sort of like have a good relationship with. Whereas if the banner looks like it's actually part of your website, then they only have to sort of like relate to you and your website. So unless you're a really creepy company that is known for bad practices, make sure that your website really fits into your website, that the banner fits into your website properly, because then there's only one thing they have to think about. Then there's the over compliance thing. Like if I'm in a car, I have this very normal basic seatbelt. I don't have a Formula One thing or the if I go into a roller coaster, it goes over my shoulders and basically restricts my breathing. That's unnecessary. And the same thing goes for banners. Figure out who are the people that are going to be visiting your website, what legislations are they subject to, and what do you need to do. So for example, that little cross, that is very specific to the Italian market. They require a opt-out. But if you look at the banner here, it basically already has an opt-out in the form of a deny button. So if you're not in Italy, I would not use that. So again, figure out what you need to do to comply and do just that. Don't overdo it. The texts we supply are very bland. They just are. Apparently, the people we hired to make these texts had no sense of humor. So don't use them. Like make your own texts. Make it sort of like reflect that you're cool and you're fun and you're trustworthy, and maybe make it relatable to what you actually do. So and the part about don't get ignored is if you make a bottom banner style cookie banner, people can ignore that, and if they don't actively consent to cookies, that basically is seen as okay, we don't know yet, so no. So make sure that the banner can't just be disregarded. If right now I'm standing in front of a screen wider than I am, and I'm a pretty sizable dude, so that banner is not going to bother me at all. So make sure it's dead in the middle. They have to do something about it. They have to actively think, okay, am I okay with this or not? So that is. And also like understand user experience. It also helps understanding like how, with call to action buttons, as marketers, you probably know all about that, but certain buttons almost scream, whereas others are sort of like, yeah, it's not important, don't bother. But don't overdo it. Like you don't want to go into dark pattern territory. So don't have like a green pulsating button seem like I'm a hip dude, and then have like a red one with skulls going like, don't do it. Like this is, it's a ridiculous example, but people do see when they are being manipulated, and if they get that feeling, they get annoying about it. So if they feel like, okay, you really want me to not opt out, then I'm going to go out of my way to make sure that I do opt out, because I don't know what you want from me, but you're not getting it. So that's the UX. So about alternatives for third-party cookies. The order is a little bit strange, because customer match and enhanced conversion are typical Google products, and those now require Google consent mode. So Google consent mode is not like an alternative to third-party cookies. It's rather a requirement for the alternatives. because customer match basically works with cohorts. This is just something you can enable in Google Ads. So instead of you actually sort of like knowing everything about, okay, you are a hamster owner on Adidas shoes with green underwear and black nail polish. I don't know, like super creepy specific. It's more gonna be in the okay, you're a pet owner and you like sports shoes, something like that. I don't actually know how it works. But the point is to be able to do that, you do need consent mode. So you need people's consent to be able to sort of like place them in that cohort and then fish them out of that cohort and then give them ads that match their profile. The same thing with enhanced conversions. Well, it's not the same thing at all, but an enhanced conversion, basically everything people do with Google services sort of like goes into the Google service server bucket, and then they get their information that way. So suddenly Google becomes the first party. And again, they need your consent for that. So with consent mode version 2, previously in version 1, it was only storage types. They only cared about your browser storage, aka cookies, and what they were used for. So analytical or ads or personalization. And they just added 2 new bits to it, which was personalization. This basically means, can I use data that I have on you to send you personalized ads? And the other one is user data, which basically means, can I collect personal data? So if people say yes, then it's game on. You can do everything you've always done. If they say no, then it's a whole business with modeling and cohorts and stuff I don't really understand, to be quite honest. Then there's server-side tagging is again taking it back to basically you're drawing it to your own server. So now you can store whatever you want there. The only disadvantage there is that it's not as transparent. People can see a cookie getting set. They don't know what you're storing on a server. So a little bit about consent mode. It's not a service as such. It's also not a product. People are always like, okay, so is this included in my subscription? It's an API. It's simply a sort of a translator. It just converts our consent model, cookie bots and user centrics, to a language that Google understands. So basically, we collect consent, we wrap it into something that Google recognizes, shove it over to Google Tag Manager, and it knows what to do. So it will, in the case of Google's own tags, and I love this feature, it just adapts. So basically it runs in restricted mode when it doesn't know what you want. And then if you consent, then full functionality is unlocked. But if you then later on decide like, this wasn't what I wanted anyway, then it can also adjust back, which is amazing. Then there's also the that's called advanced consent mode. There's also basic consent mode, and that basically makes it a binary choice. If you've consented, then services load. If not, it doesn't load. The downside there is, yes, that is much more privacy kosher, I suppose. But once the service is loaded, you can't unload it. So if you then change your mind, that service will remain loaded in memory and doing everything it was doing prior until you reload a page or visit something new. So there's advantages and disadvantages to both models. I personally like and then there's also like the data modeling. That's marketeers love that stuff. What I love is that I'm hoping that this will become sort of like the standard. One of the slides Bethany showed earlier was you could see Microsoft and Meta are also doing similar things. They're all sort of like working towards this model where you convert consent and shove it into whatever service it is, and then it can adjust on the fly. That I would love if that becomes the like the golden standard. But yeah, who knows? A little bit about server-side tagging. Yeah, you can get around some ad blockers, because I have in support, I also have this golden rule, and that is the browser always wins. If somebody has set up their browser to be super strict, then there's nothing we can do. If it says like, okay, don't display cookie banners, then there's no cookie banner. But that also means that the services that cookie banner blocks remain blocked. And also if an extension says like, yeah, this service is just not allowed to run, then you're out of luck. But on the server, you make the rules. A service can run on your server, and then every time a page is changed, data gets sent back to the server, and you can collect that as long as you have consent, obviously. You'll also be, since now the ball is in your court, you're not as dependent on Google or the other browser manufacturers to sort of like change the rules, because I think it was Safari that first started off like, okay, now suddenly cookies that were normally persistent, which means they just stuck around for a long time, they were suddenly reduced to 7 days, which was a major annoyance, because in terms of a cookie ban, that meant every single week you had to go, yes, I accept cookies, until you at some point got consent fatigue, and then just start saying no, no, no. Horrible. And you can get around that with server-side tagging. I don't want to see tracking because it sounds sort of evil, but it's perfectly benign. Because you're not loading a bunch of client-side scripts anymore, and instead do that on the server, it doesn't matter how fast the connection of the user is, well, to an extent. Yeah, so basically you now have a lot more control, but as I mentioned earlier, that also means that it's not as transparent what you're doing, because I can go into, if you know what you're doing, you can go into your browser and you can see exactly what scripts have been loaded and what cookies have been set, and even the content of those cookies. Once that moves server side, it becomes a whole lot more opaque. So that's again one of those things to bear in mind. So you can do it. It's perfectly legal. It will probably be more stable than anything else, but make sure that you're being very transparent about what you're doing. That is all I have about that stuff. So, David, please take over.
I will gladly, Richard, and thank you again for helping us to break down some of these technical concepts and kind of making it a bit more fun, because privacy sometimes is a bit dry, so it's good to have a little humor in there. And I wanted to just say to I just wanted to say to the audience that we do see your questions coming in, and we will have a few minutes after the presentation to answer the Q&A. Some of them are interesting. Actually, one just wanted to say that we're a pretty fun bunch, which I agree. But back to what's going on. The key takeaways here. Okay, so realistically, the digital marketing landscape is in for a real shakeup once Google makes this change, and it will make the change. I know it's been delayed a little bit, but it has been slowly and surely pushing it through. About 10%, I believe. No, my apologies, 3% of their Chrome users have had their cookies turned off already, and it will start to roll this out over the next few years. But as Bethany and Richard helped to demystify some of these concepts, I have a few key takeaways here. Consent management is not a nuisance or an annoyance or an afterthought. It is really, really important for brand success and for building customer trust. And remember, customers like to do business with people they trust and companies they trust. I know I do. If I trust you, I'll probably give you more money. Sharing data with third-party domains will be limited. Don't get left behind by this. Don't be left with the bill. Plan ahead. It's really, really important, and it will save you a lot of money. It's actually cheaper to be compliant than it is to not be. Google Consent Mode is really easy to implement. Google has made it as easy as possible, and it is critical to have if you use Google Ads, but also if you use analytics, if you use DoubleClick, if you use Google Marketing Platform. They're baking it in across their marketing and advertising platforms and business models. Don't be left behind by that. It's not hard to do, and we're here to help. If you need or have questions, please feel free to connect with us about this. And actually, speaking of consent mode, I'd like to announce that we are launching a new privacy academy here at, oh, sorry, my light just came off. Apologies there. A new privacy academy here at Usercentrics. And our first course is going to be the Google Consent Mode version 2 in partnership with DWC. And we have a very exciting trailer for you. So we'll play it right away.
Due to short attention spans, I'm forced to say Google Consent Mode V2 during the first 5 seconds of this trailer. Marketing heroes assemble. This year, you must rise to meet an unprecedented challenge. Google Consent Mode V2. Imagine a world where people ask themselves, what is Consent Mode V2? How will Consent Mode V2 affect my tracking? What's the difference between basic and advanced mode? What do I need to implement it? Where does a thought go when it's forgotten?
Okay, maybe I won't answer that question, but I will tell you all you need to know about Google's Consent Mode version 2. Nobody wants to have to worry about Consent Mode version 2, but you need to get it right if you want to keep doing effective advertising. I'm Max, Senior Consultant and Managing Director at DWC. And in partnership with Usercentrics and Cookiebot, we're bringing you a free course on Google's Consent Mode version 2.
It's now or never.
Like literally now, this change is happening now.
now for free. Stay ahead of the game and discover your true self.
All right, it's not going to make you a better person or particularly happy, but you will be able to keep using all of Google's services, so that's something.
Enroll now. We went to space for this trailer. All you have to do is click a button.
I will not confirm nor deny that User-Centrics was on the last SpaceX launch. I am not so sure, but I can't say. But please feel free to scan the QR code if you're interested in the course, and all registered attendees will receive a link to join the course as well. And of course, all the information there to connect with us should you have any pressing privacy questions. Now, we do have some time for questions and answers here. I do see some questions already in the Q&A. Please, if you have any questions, let us know. Put it in the Q&A at the bottom of the screen there where it says Q&A. And I have a couple here that are mostly geared toward Richard, I will say. People have a lot of technical questions. So the first one is, can I also gather user consent over several domains or devices? Richard?
Yes. Yes. So the thing is, it works. It's a client-side script. So if you consent on a mobile device, that does not carry it over to your PC. So like every browser, actually, this is not even a device itself, but every browser has its own cookies. So for example, let's say I have both Firefox, Safari, and Edge, and Google. I'm totally crazy. I do have all browsers, but that's part of my job. I have all browsers. If I consent on one or get cookies on one, it does not get shared with the others. And that means different browsers have different consents. So also on, my Edge on the PC is different than the Edge on my mobile phone. Sharing is kind of difficult now, as I've explained with the storage partitioning. So as long as you share the same top level domain, so as long as you're a sibling of or child of a domain, you can share consent very easily. If you have unrelated domains, for example, again, cookiebot.com and usercentrics.com, there's no way. It just won't allow you to do it. I hope that sort of answers the question.
I think it definitely does. I understood it, and Good. I can understand this. Then I think anyone can. I have a question here that I can quickly take. It says, do I need a CMP everywhere in the EU? The answer to that is yes. The EU is the champion of privacy in the world at the moment. GDPR is quite strict on this. If you're doing business in the EU or have any European Union citizens as traffic to your site worldwide, you will need to have a CMP or at least some sort of cookie banner to protect yourself and to make sure that you're following the law. I have another question here for you, Richard. Other than building user trust, is there any other added value a CMP can provide?
Well, there's of course the not getting fined. That's a big one. Yeah. So essentially, it just makes sure that you have the ability to actually follow the law. You have to give people the choice to give informed consent. So you need to tell them what you're doing, and that's what the banner does. It's not just that's why it's not just we use cookies. Okay, it actually has all the if you actually care to sort of like open it up, there's layers. You can see every single service that is there, and what trackers they use, what purposes they are for. You can really, if you could use hours on it, and I have. So you actually can make an informed choice and then say yes or no. By doing all that, okay, so you're not getting fined. That's fantastic. But again, you're also being super upfront about what you want, because it's no secret that you want data. People know you want that. Otherwise, why would you be using cookies at all? So just be upfront about that. It's sort of like if I go to a girl at a bar and I ask her if she wants a drink. Yeah, it's not because I think she's thirsty. It's because I see some future for us, like way down the line, like with with dates and kids and weddings and like awkward conversations with oh, sorry,
Richard, are you a creepy ad?
Oh, it might be.
But the other thing, right, is you won't be able to use Google Ads and all these things properly, because you're going to start getting blocked. Like these big tech players are going to start blocking you from doing things, from using their services if you don't have the consent, and that's why you need the CMP.
Yeah, if you don't have consent mode enabled, I at first thought that Google would simply flat out deny service. Apparently, it's not like that, but it will be in restricted mode, so you will miss out on a ton of data. So it's really if you know if the whole trust thing didn't really matter and you're not afraid of fines, you might care about the the really good conversion data.
Excellent, excellent. And I wanted to just add in here from our visitors from the US. Now, although the rules are different there, they are becoming stricter as well. And you will start to see some related privacy restrictions and requirements happening in the US as well. So don't shy away from this. This is also important for you. It's a little different, but still important. Still cookies. Okay. We have a little bit of extra time here. I wanted to see here if we have any
I
other
see another
questions.
question that I'm happy to take. I see a question about
Sure.
one of your suggestions is to have a cookie wall. This is dangerous since it's not allowed in Europe. I just want to clarify. We did not recommend that you have a cookie wall. What Richard said is that you should put the banner in the middle so that everyone can see it. What a cookie wall does is it stops you from being able to interact with the website completely if you don't take an action. And that's not what we're recommending. We're just recommending placement, right? Like where to put it. You should be able to click out of it if you don't want to interact with it and still interact with the website. Or let's say you have the one at the bottom, you should still be able to use the website and the full functionality. So just to clarify, we are not recommending that you use a cookie wall. We are just recommending that it is clear and transparent and easy to understand. And in the middle of it.
To add to that, I think this is very specific to the German legislation that does require that you can access at least a privacy policy without anything. So what the model, what a lot of our users use is on the banner itself. There is actually a link to the privacy policy, and I think it's called an imprint. Impressum, I think it's in there in German. Probably butchered that, but yeah, you have links to that, and then make sure that the banner does not pop up there, and then obviously do not use tracking on those pages. You can also use models where basically if you click outside of the banner and start interacting with the banner, that basically counts as a opt-out. So yeah, like Bethany says, a cookie wall, as the word implies, really just make sure that unless you do something here, you're not getting to the website, and you cannot do that. That's sort of like similar to the monetary incentive. You can't force a person to either say yes or no, or just you can't force them to do anything. Like, don't force people to do stuff that's bad.
Definitely. Would you like to take the other question, Bethany, or should I go ahead and ask it to the room?
You can go for it.
So there's one here that asks, is there a way to block traffic from the EU? I would say I wouldn't want to. The EU is a very large market, about almost 500 million people, so that's great for business. But Richard, maybe you can give us a little insight on that?
Yes, you can. That's the easy answer. Some US customers do, because if they know that, for example, they have a mom and pop shop, they're just a small website. They exclusively cater to Americans. There is absolutely no reason to risk European users accidentally landing there, and then you've violated their rights because you did not comply with their legislation. So what this usually works, this is like something that you set up server side. So essentially, you look at the IP. Okay, a little bit back. The internet works in such a way that you have an IP address, and that sort of like identifies you. That is basically when you visit a website, it goes like knock knock. Hi, this is domain.com. Who are you? I am 192.168.0.1. Okay, cool. So then basically it can look that IP address up and see where are you coming from. There's no functionality that actually shows GPS locations. It's not that creepy. It's just sort of like they know where who issued that IP address and where it belongs to. If it can see, hey, this is not the US or outside my state, you can configure it any way you want. You can do that. If you're an international business, don't do that. Because like David says, like there's a lot of money in Europe, and you should have some of it. But yeah, if okay, I exclusively want to cater to Americans, or just exclusively not to Europeans with their stupid GDPR, you can definitely do that.
I will add that privacy is expanding quite rapidly worldwide, so it'll be soon you'll be asking a question, can I block everyone from using my website? And then at that point,
yeah, it's generally not a good idea.
It's better.
But it was not the question.
That was not the question. That's so true. We do have one good question here. I'll take it as the last question. I have it here. So it says, it's a little bit of a long one, but I'll read it. Since the implementation of consent mode version 2 in March, I saw a usage drop in sessions, tracked, maybe negative 30%. The question is, how does modeling work for those who don't give consent?
Well, to be quite honest, nobody knows how the modeling works except Google, and they're not sharing that information. But when you see a drop like that, like 30%, that roughly correlates to like an expected opt-out rate. What you probably did is that you've misconfigured your trigger. So here's what I see every single day, like every day since March, is when they basically just have the normal all pages trigger, and as that fires, the banner's still up. So the tag tries to load and it asks Google, hey, am I allowed to load? And Google's like, I don't know, no. So it doesn't. Then you click the banner, say, yeah, but I'm totally cool with these services. Yeah, but now that sort of like the trigger has already occurred. It's not going to check again, like, oh, am I now allowed? That's not how it works. So basically now the service is just not running. Until you reload the page, at that point, consent is there. And then when it goes like, hey, am I allowed to load? It goes, yes. So you probably missed your first page impressions because of a misconfigured trigger. What we there are different triggers for Cookiebot and user-centrics, but if you use a consent trigger, so basically when we push our consent data to Google Tag Manager, we also push an event to Google Tag Manager that basically signals now we know what the user wants. On a return visit, that is faster than all pages, so there's really no reason not to do it. And otherwise, it's immediately after the person has interacted with the banner. And when you do that, the sort of like the service is sitting there and waiting. Okay, am I allowed to load? Am I allowed to load? And then as soon as they know, yes, you're allowed to load, or no. So this is probably a trigger configuration thing. As to how the modeling works for the opted out users, it's probably something with cohorts and some smart AI modeling. No one knows for sure. It's super valuable information, so I doubt that we'll ever know.
And just to add on to this, this is actually what our course is about. I know it was a lot of like explosions and going to space, but this is what Max explains in the course. He explains the difference between basic and advanced consent mode. He explains how the modeling works. He explains also the minimum requirements, because there are minimum requirements for the modeling to actually work properly. And he also does an implementation step-by-step guide. So definitely, I wonder if I can just reshare that slide quickly. Definitely check this out. Can everyone see it? Scan the QR code and you will know everything you need to know about Google Consent Mode.
It's
really quite easy. Once you sort of like get it, it's like, is it just that? And trust me, it is well worth the time. It won't take you long, even if you're totally inexperienced when it comes to like web development or whatever. You don't have to be technical for this at all. It's really it's probably one of my favorite things ever. I really am a big fan of Google Tag Manager and consent mode. It's really, really easy. And I'm not saying that because I'm paid for it, because I don't work for Google.
But Google has designed their products to be as easy to use as possible. So I'm sure they don't want it to be any confusing that it needs to be. And also to the question that we just had about the drop in modeling, we've seen this happen quite before. In one of the previous slides, we saw some real world examples where people are complaining online, trying to understand what's happening, where are my users going, where
due to short attention.
And it is definitely a major effect of consent mode. And it's hit, how it's affecting people. You can see it here. People are completely lost. We're down.
Yep.
Okay, so we're about to run out of time here, but I just wanted to say thank you everyone for joining. It brings us to the end today. I wish we had more time, but to watch this space, there'll be some more series coming up on demystifying privacy, where we're talking about a lot of other topics as well. And I'd like to thank Bethany and Richard for their insights today into the death of cookies. I'm still going to say that, even though it's not dead yet, but it's more fun to say, a little more dramatic effect. If you have any more questions or you want to get ahead of these coming changes, please do not hesitate to reach us here at User-Centrics at our website, email, any of our social media sites, LinkedIn, YouTube, etc., and to speak with one of our talented privacy specialists. I hope you have a really great day or rest of your day wherever you are, where we're watching from today. take care, and goodbye.
Thanks,
Thanks,
David.
guys.
Thank you,
Thank you, everybody.
everyone. Bye.
Bye.